Hey guys, we're taking a look at the Homestead races. Just going to jump into this really quick. I know this is kind of late in the week, but that just whatever how it's happened or how it's ended up. We'll start with the Cup Series first, then work our way back through Truck and Xfinity. First and foremost, now when we're looking at this here, or we're looking at these races and stuff, and seeing where people were at and where the field went to. Obviously, if you went with my stuff, you were playing a ton of Blaney, which was very, very unfortunate. I mean, I've been thinking about this all week just because I haven't been able to record this up until now. Ryan Blaney was absolutely the play, and it's not copium or anything. We look back at what he did at the previous weeks where he had been at on the recent forum on my stuff, and where his pricing was, and with what everything was showing. Ryan Blaney was where you need to go, and during situations like this, like if you think back a couple of years ago, Denny Hamlin at Dover, um, actually Hamlin throughout 2023. Same thing with situations where Truex just didn't end up getting a race won, or when you had multiple chances to win races in certain seasons. It seems like Blaney is going to be in that range of outcomes this year, to where for whatever reason, people didn't play Ryan Blaney. I think he was at like 27%. Now, granted, I played, or like my stuff really liked Reddick, and so when we're looking at two different things and trying to analyze, what led you to go certain directions or not, I have to be more critical on, or at least reviewing this race and looking through the data and stuff and preparing for the next intermediate track. Why did my stuff like Reddick so much as a secondary driver? And obviously, like I did not play Kyle Larson. I advised highly against Kyle Larson, but I fully faded Kyle Larson and stuff. So I mean, this is pretty um, tilting from a result standpoint, because obviously we didn't cash any of that stuff, but very, very happy with from a data perspective. I mean, you look at where Blaney was in this race, and he had the absolute fastest car. And when we're looking at which we'll go ahead and bring up the contest view here, and we'll kind of jump back and forth. And I apologize, I have this headset on, but I'm running very just behind on stuff now. I don't remember which one is which. I think the biggest one would probably be the Cup Series one. We'll take a gander really fast here. We'll let that load. Um, but yeah, like I just can't believe Blaney wasn't played. I can't believe he was the absolute nuts, and he, very unfortunate, variance. He blew his motor. Um, Super unfortunate, but Blaney was the play. I mean, this is just a situation where if you played anybody else but Blaney, and you liked anybody else prior over Blaney, I would assume or lean towards like your stuff being wrong. Even Larson, like Larson coming in at 51%. What is going on here, dude? I mean, this is a massive contest. Let me pause this and see if it loads. All right, sorry I paused it. Whenever it's the Cup Series one, because that's such a fucking huge contest with all its line, it takes a while to load. I think it took me like a minute and a half from when I paused it to when it ended up loading. When we're looking here, and I thought it was my ISP, but it was just anyway. When we're looking here, we're looking at the most duplicated lineups, and as I said, and yet again, this coming from somebody who didn't cash. Like obviously, retrospectively, when you're analyzing the contest, and I think this is a perfect example of where were you above the field? Where did the field go? Is that leverage worth it? Is that potential ROI worth it? Were you able to find a place where the general populate or the general DFS field wasn't playing or wasn't at, and were you able to capitalize on that? And as you see here, none of the highest duplicated lineups even has what is up with Suarez's name here? Jeez Louise. In this file. The field just did not have any playing at all, and everybody went to Dylan and stuff like that. Whereas we look at driver combos and stuff, and we can go ahead and see where these two guys, or where the two highest um, scoring, not scoring, but the two highest combinations. But this is gonna take a a while to load. So while that loads, we will hop back into the lap analyzer while that loads, and we'll come back to that in a second. Anywho, when we're looking at Homestead and where people were at in speed, let this load too. It might be Xfinity actually, because I've had really slow stuff all day actually. So I do apologize, because I think this is way more on Xfinity today than anybody else. We look at people, what I would consider to be underperformances in this race. Obviously, I mean, underperformances from a sense that, I mean, Larson did not have the best car. He had the second best car, if not third best car, depending on where he was at in the run in this race. We look at where Reddick was, and Reddick underperformed. Reddick very much struggled. Like I said, my stuff liked him last year at Vegas. Last year at Homestead, I didn't play him at Homestead. Liked him last week at Las Vegas, and this could just be a situation where Reddick had a bad day, but Reddick underperformed here. Who were the people who were actually good driving up through traffic and stuff? You know, you look at people like Denny Hamlin. Like, that's a really good show, especially when you're starting way down here and you're able to get up through the field and actually end up competing and stuff. You know, you look at Bowman, who I would argue probably had the second best car today. Yet again, you know, fucking threw the race away at the end. But if I'm looking at this race, you know, you have to really consider that Blaney was the best car. I'd argue Bowman was probably second, and then it's a toss-up between Larson and Hamlin and stuff. And so, did ownership reflect that? And no, they didn't. Now, granted, let's see if this is done. Okay, so we look at the two highest owned drivers, and it was a lot of obviously Larson, Reddick. Obviously Larson with all these guys here. It's Larson then pretty much a place differential play and or a value play. But what I really want to look at is your top four here. So let that load as we continue to look back at kind of where these guys were at. You know, and you look at what, like, this stomping from Ryan Blaney. Like, this is why Blaney was, I mean, obviously blew a motor, but like Blaney had the best car of the day, and it wasn't even close. So, what does that mean for Blaney, or from a Blaney standpoint? Now, I believe our next race that we go to is Darlington, next intermediate track, rather. And this could mean, you know, a number of things. And it's unfortunate that Darlington is the next race, because typically, which, now yet again, I'm just speaking out loud here, when we're looking at Blaney, okay, we've seen that he was under-owned at both Vegas and Homestead based on what his, like, where he was supposed to be running, speed-wise and everything. Now, he gets wrecked at Las Vegas, so anything in the stat sheets is going to show that he was a bad play. He got, or he blew a motor at Homestead, so yet again, anything in the stat sheets where people are like looking back at like what people score from a raw perspective, Blaney doesn't stand out or anything, okay? So, we enter Darlington. Based on recent form, it'll probably show Blaney as the favorite to win Darlington, okay? Now, at least my stuff. Now, yet again, I'm just talking based on my stuff or what I see, because I know how my stuff's going to act. It's going to show Blaney as the favorite at Darlington. Now, I'm going to probably play 30% Blaney on that alone, but realistically, Blaney will probably finish anywhere from 6th to 4th at Darlington, just because it's such a tough track, and I don't think he's going to qualify in the first two rows, and so he'll be potentially trying to lead the race late. And obviously, you have other people who are who perform very, very well at Darlington and stuff. So, from a DFS perspective and a, you know, leverage play and stuff, you know, we look back at the last couple of years of when, like, hey, you probably want to be on Byron when he's not owned, when he has the high upside. Hey, you probably want to be playing a lot of Hamlin, Truex Jr. in situations, stuff like that. This is probably a situation where Blaney's probably going to explode on intermediate tracks this year and be a top 3 contender up until really the end of May. And at that point, we go to Darlington, Dover, Kansas, Charlotte. Okay, so all those races, he's probably the guy that you want the most ownership of. Now, Darlington's going to be the first one that we run into, you know. So depending on how well he runs there, will probably carry people or show people interest if they want to play him at other tracks. Now, the Larson effect is everybody just wants to play Larson at every track now, and Larson, what I would argue, is underperforming based on what he should be doing. Now, yet again, he won the race at Homestead, he won the truck race on Friday, but he's underperforming based on where he should be at or what he should be doing and stuff like that. So, as we go to intermediate tracks, I think Blaney's probably the favorite. And especially, if, what needs to be a priority play from a DFS perspective up until we either see something change or, and something changes. It's like he just doesn't show speed in practice. Like he showed speed at all the tracks so far in practice. I don't really get concerned about qualifying times because if you could show speed in practice and then back it up with speed in the race, then that's all I want to see. Let's see, most 4 drivers. Obviously with Priest, Larson. I don't know why Soares' name was coming up like that. Interesting. But very, very kind of chalky slate and stuff. Whereas we look at where I was at. Now, granted, I only did 2 lineups, okay? I've been running around dealing with family and other stuff right now. But I was focused on like the Rainbow Warrior, the 24, a couple other single entries and stuff. And I know for a fact I would have had an absolute assload of Ryan Blaney. And the lineups that I had made, that I had played, were here. Let me get these here, which I think they were both. I mean, we don't know how they finish. Obviously, if he doesn't blow, that's Homestead. If they don't blow the motor. But when we're looking at where I had covered both Bowman potentially leading, and then getting place differential from Dillon, Keselowski, Soares, and Priest on this one. Now, granted, I think Reddick is where my data and my approach got messed up. Obviously, should have been a Denny Hamlin or something along those lines if I was looking for a place differential play with top 5 upside. And yet again, Hamlin was the better play there, and so we kind of yet again. I didn't see the true speed from Larson. If Blaney doesn't blow the motor, there's a real chance Larson doesn't. Obviously, there's a real chance Larson doesn't lead the race, but there's a real chance Larson isn't getting as many laps led as he does either, and he's not paying off that because when we look at the amount of laps led he had, 19 laps led, 29 fast laps. I know a lot of people are celebrating that as oh yeah, Chalk came in. I mean, that's a fucking failure. That's a gross underperformance on what. Larson ends up. I mean, he ends up with 75 points, but based on his price tag, and for the majority of that race, Larson was scoring 55, 59 points and being being underpriced and really bringing down, or not underpriced, but not hitting the raw points people needed, and he was very much being forced out of the optimal by Denny Hamlin. So things to keep in mind there when we do look at the back of the field and we look at where people went. Obviously, Austin Dillon has been showing pretty tremendous speed. Now, granted, what drew me to Dillon was precisely what he had done at Vegas the week before. Yet again, if you get any of our memberships, whether it be the NASCAR or the core package, you get access to these tools that you can go through and look at these. So let's go ahead and just very quickly look at Las Vegas and then come back to Homestead here. We'll let that load. And you look at what Austin Dillon did at Las Vegas. Okay, now yet again, speeds on pit lane or has a pit lane issue and doesn't finish the race and stuff, but pretty decent speed in terms of being able to drive through the field. This specifically is what showed me to get to Austin Dillon for Homestead, because specifically if you're able to drive up through the field, I either want to see when I'm looking at stuff, and maybe you should be looking at this as well, when you're looking at where people are running in races, you either want to see a consistent running position in the top 15 or whatever to indicate top 15 speed as a baseline, or the ability to drive up through the field. And Austin Dillon was able to do that in both of these races here. And obviously, he finishes 13th, which is really, really good finish with him at 47 points. But that is really exactly what I used for getting to Dillon at Homestead. We look at Ryan Priest and what he's able to do. This is a really, really decent car. You look at Priest in comparison with his other teammates. You look at Buescher and Brad Keselowski. Now, Brad you can argue is underperforming. But you look at this team as a whole. I mean, I think this is more of a Brad issue. Obviously, Brad isn't a bad driver or a bad play. Just recently, in the last couple of races, he's been the third car of this organization. But really, you look at what Preece and Chris Buescher are able to do, and these guys are pretty much identical cars. So yet again, at intermediate tracks, if Preece is starting in the back of the field, if Buescher's starting in the back of the field, they are worth your time putting money towards and stuff like that. You look at what Suarez and Chastain are able to do in this race. I mean, that's not bad. Now, obviously, Chastain runs into an issue, and I believe he speeds at this point late in the race, or does something wrong, if I could be mistaken here. But Suarez drives for the field too, as we're looking back here. Ty Dillon has been very interesting as well. So Ty Dillon is projected, or at least expected, to qualify pretty poorly moving forward. Whoops. And if Ty Dillon is going to continue to start in the back of the field with speed that is very much a 25th, 26th place car, I think you have to consider him, especially when he's at 5,000. I'm pretty sure he was at 5 because he scored 26 points here. Oh, he's 52, which is like pretty much right in line. We could look at the front row gang. So you look at what Gragson is doing. You look at what Zane Smith is doing. I mean, pretty much identical. Like, and obviously, people start differently. Who's the Gillen? Obviously, you look at the start of the race. This is why whenever I'm like, oh, let me do a race review and stuff like that, or like I want context for why things are happening. I want to be able to look at the whole race as like a whole thing, and especially when we're trying to build DFS line. That's why I'm saying, like, it's not copium. It's just how NASCAR is, but Blaney was the correct play. When we're looking at these here, I don't necessarily care about how somebody starts. I mean, everything's important. But what I really want to see is where you are at in the majority of your run, okay? Now, I'm not looking at average running position because, yet again, I'm segmenting these races into different situations here. Sometimes I want to include the start of the race, sometimes I don't. But when we're looking at how Gragson and Zane Smith are both performing, okay? Now, yet again, Gragson is probably going to continue starting up front, so he's going to be, questionable on his usage, depending on what his price tag is or depending on what's going on. But Zane Smith and even Gillen, I don't know if he got trapped lap down or just ran slow, or he could have just been like actually slow. He's usually better than this, but this is why I don't mind Gillen at its upside, because this is what his teammates are at. If Gillen is what was Gillen at? He was at 56, like that. I mean, that's worth the upside of looking at somebody in this range here. Who else do we want to look at? We'll look at the other guys who kind of were in play but weren't. Look at what Bell did. You look at what Elliott did. You look at what kind of take a look at where Logano, Bell, and Elliott were at. Yet again, situations. Now, these were more so when we look at the practice laps. We didn't really see anything out of Elliott that you wanted to see. Bell was struggling. Now, yet again, this is like super long, so they're running super long here. You look at Logano. But these are situations too where, when I'm looking at where they're at in terms of speed versus where they should be at, when we're looking at where they are running at these tracks, okay? If they're showing a drop-off between where they are in practice versus where they should be at, I typically don't want to be playing them. Now, obviously, Elliott's like, 15th to 20th and stuff in these ranges here. But, like, you typically want to play the guys who are showing a decent amount of speed at these tracks, also combined with where they are at in practice. So, like Blaney, right? Blaney's been a top 5 car here, starting 6th. We look at the practice laps that he was showing, pretty decent. Okay, showing a drastic head or a drastic, situation of where he's ahead of like the guys we were just talking about. Like, that's why Blaney probably should have been played more. You looked at Bowman of what he's doing here, top top 6 car. Okay. Now yet again, you might want to argue, or you might want to say like, hey, ran, or has a pretty poor, average speed in these practice laps. But you then compare that with where he's at in terms of the green versus other people around him and stuff, and the Hendrick upside of like, okay, he's finally with the rest of the field around like 20, 25, into the run and stuff. It's probably going to be a pretty good long run car and stuff. So I don't know, kind of working backwards and stuff here. Who else was owned, or where else are we going here? Yet again, sorry I'm kind of blowing through this stuff, but we kind of need to hurry here. Yet again, if you want to go over stuff in more detail on your own, you can join us on any of these packages. Get the NASCAR only, to where you get my projections, sheets, projections, access to the Discord as well, and then all these tools here, and then any of these 3 will get you, these tools and any of the cores. Then obviously the SaberSim add-ons and stuff. How much time do I got? I'm recording this before the Truck Series race on Friday, so I'm trying to get this out of the way. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Truck Series at Homestead. I just got a message on the Discord. What is going on here? Give me a moment. Let me pause this. Sorry, work stuff. Very, 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 very interesting time for TrueDFS. I'm very happy to be here, but it's a lot of work is going into things in the background. Okay, so this is a. Actually, we'll go back. So Friday I was able to get lines made, but I wasn't able to watch the race up until yesterday and stuff. And you're gonna love. So actually, that's Truck Martinsville on the top, right? Yeah, that's this one. So let me bring up trucks at Homestead. So I was very happy with, at least at some point. I mean, obviously Corey Heim had the issues of the wire on the header causing the car to shut off. So these are your highest owned lineups, and these are in these here. We look at the 3 highest driver combinations as we get ready to kind of go through the race here. And oops, wrong one. Alright, let me get this here. I'll let that load as it's load and pulling from here. These are your interesting. These are your highest owned guys in this race. Okay, now you're going to notice that Ben Rhodes Ben Rhodes, from a projections point, showed very, very good upside. I think his ownership came in at like 31%. I know he was lower owned than what he should have been at. Come on, baby. We're still looking at the fucking Cup Series. Oops. That's wrong one. There you go. Yeah, so Ben Rhodes comes in under-owned compared to what he should have been, because he projected as one of the better plays in this race. But you then look at the disaster that he had when he got involved in the crash in the first lap. This is Las Vegas. Ay, dude. And that eliminated a good portion of the field, because at this point his car was absolutely fucking destroyed, and he was absolutely screwed. You look at where I was at. Obviously, this is the race I like Kyle Larson the most. Kyle underperformed in this race too. I just don't understand why in races where he is such a huge favorite, not from a betting perspective, but from like an actual skill perspective, why he refused to even compete with any competence at all. Okay? And then the race, he actually leads a good portion. In the Xfinity Series race, he loses on the final restart. Absolutely, like, insane shit. Okay? But I had literally all of the roads. Obviously, these didn't cash. This one did. Pretty much how it went. We look at where... I use this to at least take a gander of how I'm doing. I wanted to play more this weekend. I might end up being running around the weekend anyway, so there's a real chance I end up having to do the same thing where I can't even watch the Xfinity Series race. At least we have Q done right now for it, but I have no idea how much I'm going to end up playing this weekend, which really sucks because I just don't have the time to sit down and hand build stuff. Usually hand building and stuff takes me like 2.5 hours, 3 hours to get all my shit um, done, but I was well over the field on Larson, obviously over the field on uh, Ben Rhodes, expecting Jack Wood to actually do something at some point. Now I am very happy with the Hemrick. Okay, probably we wanted to have more, probably going forward. Like, we look at where these guys, who's in these cars. Okay, now Hemrick, sucks in his own right, but when we look at where he's at compared to the field and what he's doing here, you look at Daniel, and like he's in a good car. Two, he has way more experience than all these other guys. Like Hemrick needs to be played more. He's in a good car, good driver. Like he knows what he's doing, right? Um, Obviously, like I said, Corey was having issues, keeping the car fired at some point, but still, even with that, staying in the top 5 running positions and stuff. You look at what Lars was able to do, and even when he spun, which, like, what is he doing? Like, that's insane, dude. Why are we spinning out? Also, secondly, yeah, sure, leads early, gets beat by Corey Heim. Like, Corey is kicking the shit out of people. Corey is your absolute favorite in this field, and especially when we don't have a Cup Series guy in the field, like Corey Heim is, like, by definition, the best play. And, like, this weekend at Martinsville, obviously this is happening in, like, an hour or whatever, this stupid race, but, like, the fact that Byron is in the race is now lowering, or technically lowering, and having Corey Heim be the second most expensive guy. Like, you should be playing a ton of Corey Heim here, in all these races and stuff. We look at the results of anybody else who came out of nowhere. Obviously, we look at Riggs, Ankrum. Chastain's unfortunate just because he's in a nice car. He's really not able to do anything, past. Like, he's getting everything out of that car. You look at Lane Riggs, you look at Tanner Gray, you really look at where Tricon is outside of Tony, but you look at Corey, you look at, we'll bring up other, yeah, we missed the one, there we go. So let's remove these guys. Let's see where the good people are in Tricon equipment now. Yet again, Tanner Gray started too high up, and then ran into issues. Unfortunate. Obviously, weekend before at Homestead, he started in the teens and finished fourth. This situation where he just overqualified. Well, too much of a short run car and got beat. Jones starts 12th, ends 12th. Bit of a unfortunate run for both of these guys. That's what happens when you get Larson. That's what happens when you get people, driving through the field and everything. Let's go ahead and look at the ThorSport guys outside of obviously Ben Rhodes. Try and get an idea of where they are at. I gotta hurry this up here. Crafton, Ty Majeski. I believe Majeski spent on pit lane in this instance here, but this is the best estimation of where Ben Rhodes probably could have been at, right around where these guys are at, based on his price and where he was at. That's why I was just overweight on him. Yet again, if you want to do this in more detail or on your own, you are always more welcome to do that. Let's go ahead and take a gander at the Xfinity Series race. So let's do that. Let's look here. Look at the race results. Too fucking Larson losing this shit. This is what I mean. Like, why? Oh my god, dude. Yet again, the race where he was actually the best car, deserved everything he had. That's when he's like, oh fuck it, we're just not gonna win this race. Clear chalk across the board each week, and because of Larson's outcomes are win the race, have a good car, either wins the race or don't, or crash it. Like, those are his 3 outcomes. 66% of the time, like, he's gonna underperform it and kill a lot of lineups. That's why, specifically for the Cup, I was underrated on him, especially after how he was doing this whole fucking weekend. But we look at the top finishers here and see if we can find anything out of the ordinary between these guys here. And luckily for Xfinity, usually the finishing order outside of Rex, which we haven't had Rex, your finishing order is usually lined up very specific of where everybody is in terms of speed. Okay, this is where they were. These are your top 5 guys pretty much all day, so, so on and so forth. We look at the who finished 4th here. Creed. We'll look at Creed as well. I know Creed started ninth. Yeah, he did. Yet again, especially at intermediate track with high tire wear, which yes, they all have high tire wear, duh. But Homestead specifically requires having a fast car on the long run, not having tire wear kill your car, having enough skill to drive on the track. You could look at Homestead, especially when it goes green. Now, yet again, when we go green from lap 98 or whatever to toward to the end of the race, this run here for anybody in the field is going to be where they were at and where they should have finished and stuff like that. So in terms of, we could look at Poole, we could go ahead and look at Ellis. We'll look at where these kind of the and the reason I'm doing these guys is because this is why you play them whenever they start in the back of the field, because this is where these guys are supposed to line up at. Now Chris Wright, ran issues. Well, I'm trying to find other people who are kind of mid-tier price plays and stuff. We could look at Kyle Sieg here. We can go ahead and look at I mean, I think this is a really good representation of where people are at in terms of speed. And so when I am, looking at the recent form for Xfinity of where people in the Xfinity series are at, I'm going to be looking specifically at this run here of where everybody was at. Now, it's not going to all just be running position. It'll be obviously kind of, more factors and stuff, but that where people are at during this run in the race is going to be a really, really good indication of where people are at in terms of speed and a good projection arena for you to give people based on upcoming intermediate tracks. I have to go. I'm out of time, but I want to make this so you guys can have it. See you guys later. Bye-bye.